And we can all
Yeah,
pee.
I'll hold it like a man.
Sunday, 6 o'clock, we host a little old show, it's called Dangerous Thoughts, where I rock the mic and Tyson talks the talk. We say what we want, it might give you a shock, but it's not shock radio, it's more than that. It's about people thinking and talking right back. We keep the mic open, everyone reports. It's called Different Opinions on the Floor. It's called Dangerous Thoughts, Sundays at 6 p.m. The subscript pirate might let you in to express your mind and get it off your chest. Tune into Dangerous Thoughts every Sundays at 6 and talk like a robot. Talk like a robot. Everybody talks like a robot. Robots, talk like a robot. Talk like a robot. Dangerous thoughts come from AI. Robots.
Yeah.
I love that. I can't do that.
Dangerous thoughts do come from AI robots,
They do.
Only the best kind.
You think AI robots are going to clean up the environment for us?
They don't need to breathe.
Oh yeah, they're probably just going to kill us all.
Yep.
And then use us as like batteries, like the Matrix.
Well, that's you bring up a good point. AI is one whole separate technology. Robotics is another. What happens when the two are married?
Death to us all, I think.
That'll be interesting because that's the goal is to pair the two. I mean, if you have robotics and you have AI and you can marry the two, then you have essentially data.
Yeah, as soon as one of those robots gets self-aware and gets access to the system, I mean, it's like, remember when Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal used to hang out together? See how well that worked out when one got a little smarter? I think we're boned. We're boned. But welcome to Dangerous Thoughts, everybody. Dangerous Thoughts is a show where me and my co-host Tyson Strasberg, we pick a different topic every week, and we have a different guest every week. How unique is that, right? Actually, it is pretty unique. We pick topics that people should talk about, that the country should talk about, that our species should talk about, that human beings should talk about. Sometimes stuff a little bit on the edge that people are scared to talk about. So if you've got a vagina this big or balls this big and you want to come and talk on our show after our guest makes his appearance and discuss this week's topic, the environment, or if you have a non-binary ball vagina this big, you can write Subscript Pirate at Twitter and tell him that you would love to come on our show, and he will send you a link, and then you will join us live here at Dangerous Thoughts. Yay! Live! Wee! Yay! My anus is bleeding. Yay! You ever
Boy,
see
we're driving callers to the show right now.
Yeah, I know. Did you ever see that cartoon though? It's such a great cartoon. Did you ever take the time to go and see Spike and Mike's Sick and Twisted Cartoon Festival? It used to tour.
No, although I remember when South Park first aired, and it was on Comedy Central.
South Park was originally a Spike and Mike Sick and Twisted short.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that. And I remember the first episode was with anal probes, and I was like, "Am I?" Because it was on. Was it Cartoon Network? What was it? I don't think it was Cartoon Network. Maybe it was on Comedy Central. I think it was Comedy Central. Anyway, I remember it, in the '90s, and I went and I saw Bigger, Longer, and Uncut in the theater, and I missed probably half of the dialogue because people in the audience were laughing so hard.
Yeah. South Park was great. And when it was on Spike and Mike's Sick and Twisted, and it was just a short, the birth of South Park, it was really, really, I mean, they said really bad words, and it was like really misogynistic and racist, but in that brilliant way that they do it. But it was, it was not for TV.
No.
Yeah.
And a few people know this, but The Simpsons actually started on what's her name show?
Tracy Ullman.
Tracy Ullman.
I'm old. I'm old.
Now go home. The end of her
I
show.
remember I used to actually watch the Tracy Ullman show just to see those little Simpsons shorts. That was like my favorite part.
Loved it. And Gary Shandling was. Excuse me. Gary Shandling was, I think, really funny. He did another sketch comedy, and even his opening theme was hilarious. This is the theme to Gary Show, the opening theme to Gary Show. This is the music that you hear as you watch the credits. I mean, it was hilarious. I mean, who thought about that for an opening theme? Brilliant.
Probably Gary and his writers.
Gary Shandling, right?
Yeah. So the topic of Dangerous Thoughts this week, besides Gary Shandling and The Simpsons and burping and stuff like that, it is the environment and environmental corruption, to be more specific. So when you think about the environment, how much time do you spend thinking about the environment, Tyson? Let's put you on the spot.
No, it's fine. I do think about it a lot, and one of the things that I
drink from my plastic McDonald's cup. Speaking of people that ruin the environment,
I remember one
straw?
time. Yeah,
straw. Straw's the death of everything.
One time I was sitting at the transit center at Grossmont Center in La Mesa, and I was with my boyfriend at the time, and we were having a cigarette. And I remember this couple came, and they had a small child. They were probably 20 feet away. We were there. We were having our cigarette. And the mother took her child, walked up literally to our face, and said, "Look at those people. They're trying to kill you with their cigarettes." How rude. Anyway.
Did you try to give some to the kids?
Well, her boyfriend looked like he lifted weights, so we moved along. But
I smoked my first cigarette when I was 10 years old, I think, maybe 9. Boy, was it. No, that's not true. It's more like 6. I was in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was hanging out. My parents were hippies, so they were on the road all the time, and they were hanging out with this guy named Nick, who ended up blowing his hand off later in life. Totally different, unrelated story. But Nick was a cool guy because he would drink NyQuil. He was a NyQuil alcoholic, and so he had all these bottles of NyQuil all over the house, and he loved guns. And in Arizona, they had like these scorpions that would like come in the house, and Nick would like put down his NyQuil and get a gun and hand it to me and like shoot the scorpion. And it was fantastic. And I used to steal Nick's Chesterfield non-filter cigarettes. And at like 6 years old, I would sneak up into the woods when my parents weren't there, and I would take a couple puffs. And I remember when you first smoked as a young kid, probably as like the first time anybody smokes, but as a kid, it's wild because you get all these tingles and you feel kind of sick, like you're going to puke, but it's a good feeling, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. It does.
Yeah. If you've ever done opiates, similar to the, that whole like, oh wow, this is neat, I'm gonna puke. Boy, we're getting off topic.
But I bring up the smoking thing and what she said to make a point that the tailpipe of a car puts out every 30 seconds an entire carton's worth of cigarette smoke as far as pollutants go. Every 30 seconds. So when people, walk by and, wag their finger, oh, that's cigarette, and then they get into their SUV.
Yeah.
Who's polluting the environment here?
Straws and people that get that pick on you when you throw your butt or something like that. Those people really, they rub me the wrong way. When I go camping, I don't leave a cigarette butt. I don't leave a piece of plastic. When I go out to the woods, to the national forest, I pack it in and I pack it out. I poop in the right places. I don't poop near water sources. I am an all nature guy. But when I'm in the city, which is already concrete and pollution, a cigarette butt is not going to kill a fish. I just don't buy that shit. But I'm getting off on the wrong foot here because the environment is absolutely important and we're destroying it. And for 200 years or 300 years now, I don't know when the Industrial Revolution began, but we have done some massive devastation to the environment. If you're one of those douchebags that doesn't believe that mankind has caused the problems that we're facing with the environment and the global warming, man, you need to come on our show and talk to us right now because you need some education. Yeah,
I got in a huge argument with my friend up here because everybody up here is conservative. I live in rural BFE, and he kept all these Democrats want electric cars and electric trucks and electric, and I told him at some point, I mean it's not tomorrow. It's not like every ARCO is going to close tomorrow. It's not that every coal mine is going to close tomorrow. It's not every nuclear power plant's going to close tomorrow. But at some point, we need to begin the transition. We need to wean ourselves off of these fossil fuels and start with the renewable energy, things like wind, solar, hydropower. We just can't.
And stop killing all the scientists that release the water cars and stuff, and they get poisoned by the CIA and shit. Every time
I remember that story. Yeah.
Every time they try to release free energy, and that's one of 200 stories of people that have actually tried to release free energy machines that have been knocked off. You can
all the way back from Nikola Tesla, right?
Yeah, you can dig in. They don't want this stuff released, and it's absolutely available. That's my opinion, not fact, but I would call it a fact because I've looked into it pretty well. What were you just saying?
Nikola Tesla, his idea was free energy.
Oh yeah,
and imagine how the funding dried up from what's his name, the big banker,
was it Rockefeller? Who was his promoter?
I forget who bankrolled him. It wasn't Rockefeller. I think J.P. Morgan. I think
was it J.P. Morgan? Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
I think it probably was. Yeah, Tesla had the right idea, and then the alternating current thing, and now we've been on this like stupid everybody pays for their electricity nonsense. Yeah, and then all these blackouts and nuclear power, and man, all it could have took was a little change with Tesla. So I want to bring on our host because I'm really excited to talk to you. Talk to you.
Our host?
Well, we're also bringing on the host. Yeah, who's the host?
Did I say host? Oh, that's me. Well, I'm going to turn on. I'm going to activate. This is actually a robotic AI that looks like Manu. I'll be right back with the real Manu. Hi, guys. Welcome
That's
to
called
Dangerous
acting.
Thoughts.
Acting.
Acting.
Very well done. Acting.
Brilliant. So this is our host. His name is Joseph Alexiou. Joseph Alexiou wrote a book called Gowanus. What is it called? Gowanus?
Brooklyn's Curious Canal.
Brooklyn's Curious Canal. You're right. There's the picture right there. Gowanus, Brooklyn's Curious Canal.
That's right.
And I'm going to let him tell a little bit of this story because what I know about it is it's one of the most polluted canals in the world. And the little bit that I know from knowing Joseph is that, all these New York real estate tycoons are building property for people to live in this place that is going to kill them when they buy their house there, which is the long and short of it. But tell us a little bit about your book and tell us a little bit about the evil shit going on in New York.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor. It's a thrill. Really appreciate it. To tell my stories is great because I know you guys care about the environment, but it is a kind of sometimes wonky and difficult topic to talk about. How do these things work? So in short, the book is about a 400-page history of the progress around a body of water in Brooklyn called Gowanus, which was actually a naturally occurring body of water about 2 miles long, surrounded by marshland that once the colonizers arrived, they turned it slowly but surely into a canal that became one of the most important industrial waterways in America. And by that, I mean, and by the 1870s, Brooklyn was the third largest city in America, expanding very quickly, faster than the city of New York, which it competed with, and Manhattan across the water. And that canal became not only an industrial thoroughfare for barges to drop off all of the materials for a growing city, especially coal, most of all coal. And it also became, because of civic practices in the 19th century, the site of what we call combined sewage overflow, which means that all the water from rain and all your toilets and all your sinks, all that shit flows together and during periods of rain flows directly into the canal. And so it was the most important, one of the shortest and perhaps most polluted waterway in the entire country, if not the entire world. We're counting 200 to 400 million gallons of raw sewage every year flowing into the canal to this day.
To this day. And it is surrounded by two of the most expensive neighborhoods in Brooklyn, which is Park Slope and Carroll Gardens. We can talk about Brooklyn geography. But it is a real estate hotbed that happened when Brooklyn became very cool, perhaps back in 2000, 2004, 5, 6. And it was also then discovered by the EPA, the people that created the Superfund. Hey, man.
Yeah.
I was there in 96 and Brooklyn was cool then.
Oh, it was so cool that people didn't know. You were actually you were like there.
I was at the beginning of the cool.
Absolutely.
I loved it because my friend Bobby the Midget, he was the dude on all those Dwarves punk rock covers. He had a beautiful little home, one of those brownstones, but the one that the apartment underneath that has all the space in the backyard.
Right. The English basement.
Yeah, the English basement. Sorry to interrupt you, but Brooklyn was awesome. So the Gowanus Canal is adjacent.
Yeah, it actually is in the center in a way of it flows all the way up towards the downtown, the most concentrated and dense part of that area. And along its banks for the course of 100 years were 50 different kinds of industries. But the most important and the most pollutant industry was coal gasification, where they take coal and they turn it to gas to push it through to people's homes. And in 1860, the largest coal gasification plant in the country was built on the Gowanus Canal on its banks, on the site of a former Irish slum that would flood regularly. And they produced gas for the entire city of Brooklyn, which eventually reached 1 million people, which was huge. And in the process of that century, they dumped millions of gallons of coal tar, a toxic carcinogenic material or goopy substance, into the ground. And now it is there 150 feet deep. And also lining the bottom of the canal with a combined sewage overflow that sticks to the toxic waste and it becomes something the EPA calls black mayonnaise. And that's about 10 feet thick on average. So it's
wait a second.
Shit. Yes.
You've got 150 feet of coal tar waste.
Yes. Under the ground.
Under the ground.
Yes.
And then you've got 10 feet of mayonnaise on top of that?
10 feet of mayonnaise in the canal itself, under the water,
canal itself.
On the bottom of the canal.
On the bottom of the canal.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, from what I know, kids jump in that shit.
And that's not all. There's also lead. There's also all kinds of heavy materials like mercury. And then there's Gonococcus, which is the bacteria that causes gonorrhea. They found cholera in there. It has a huge amount of fecal coliform, which is poop. And they measure that in parts per 100 as opposed to parts per billion.
If this was Flint, Michigan, they would try to turn that into drinking water.
I think they're doing the same. I'm serious with I don't know, but I'm assuming they're probably doing the same. I mean, where does this section of Brooklyn get its drinking water from?
Actually, we in New York City get our drinking water from a reservoir way upstate that we have sole access to with a pipeline that goes directly down to the city. And none of the people in upstate New York are actually allowed to drink that water. They have to get their own shitty water from wells and under the ground. And so that's a whole system that was created maybe, I think, at the turn of the 20th century. And so people ask all the time, can this get into our drinking water? And in theory, the answer is no. But what it can get into a whole lot of other things, including just coal tar under the ground can exude gases that go up into, come up basically out through the ground. And if you build a condo on there, which is what the city of New York is planning to do to the 230-story buildings with 800 residents in them, they have to monitor those gases and vent them every year until the end of time. And so they know they're building on top of toxic waste, and they're going to remove some of it, but not all of it. And that is sort of like what I talk about is how do we get to this point where this is what we're doing? And the answer is, money and lobbyists and interests that don't want to deal with how much we polluted over the course of human history, our air, our water, and our land.
Does the Gowanus Canal at this point still have barges delivering stuff? And are there any factories still in operation?
There are very few industries left on the canal. Only ones that are left are scrap metal barging facility that would actually take our scrap metal and sell it to China. And then there's concrete plants. Concrete is like one of the other big industries of Gowanus, which also has, funny enough, a long history of ties to the mafia.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
That's chapter 9, I think, or 8. Yeah. So there's a lot of great stories and stuff that's in there. But there's very few industries left operating on the canal. And that is by design, because cities don't have big factories in them anymore, and cars took over from city, transit. And so all of that stuff moved outside of cities, and the industries there died. And a lot of the lots that were there were just abandoned, so polluted that no one would build on them for, 50, 75 years.
And so now who is it that's coming and doing this big push to build these how many story homes did you say?
30. They've actually landed on 30-story in a flood zone. In a flood zone over toxic waste next to a combined sewage overflow open sewer.
I've got a question. Tell people that are buying these condos about this?
That's where I was going with that, and let me explain. I used to work for Vista Environmental Research, and before people would buy property, they would hire my company. That way back when mid-90s when I worked there, to do an environmental risk assessment of the property, because there are leaky underground storage tank. It's called Lust. There are all sorts of other environmental factors. And if you buy a property and then there is an environmental issue with that property, you as the owner have the financial responsibility of cleaning that up, which is where my question is, if they build something there, people buy property there, and then those property owners, if any pollution, ends up on the property, are they not financially responsible?
They absolutely are. And what happens is, so in the case of the worst polluted site in Gowanus, it's actually the company National Grid, which is an international energy company that is headquartered in London, that bought company Keyspan, which basically meant they inherited what you're just talking about, the liability to clean it up.
You buy the property, you buy the liability.
And so two things happen here. One, New York State has something called the Brownfield Program, where they actually get tax breaks to build on these properties and in theory clean them. But what happens is big companies like that, once they work with the state or the EPA in the case of Gowanus, they will just fight legally every decision that they disagree with and challenge the science of federal trained engineers that are doctors and scientists of their craft field and say, no, you don't know what you're talking about, and slow down and push down all of these, all of these various proofs that there's a lot of waste there and you can't just build on it without cleaning it up. And then beyond that, they will actually push the cost of really doing the cleanup onto the ratepayers, basically the people in Brooklyn that live there. So instead of taking out of their own profits internationally or nationally, they'll just raise the rates of gas in the city of Brooklyn. And they did it not only around Gowanus, but in a weird corner of Staten Island where only Republicans live. And I found out that was something that some state senator pushed just to piss off some of his Republican colleagues. So they actually played politics with public money. You can tell that I spend too much time on this.
Well,
no.
And they have lobbyists.
I'm glad
they have lobbyists
do.
that go to Washington to do that. They have lobbyists that go to Washington specifically to do that. And how many poor people have lobbyists in Washington?
Zero. And what I discovered in my book, chapter 3 or 4, is that there's one of the guys that developed the Gowanus Canal back in the 19th century. He wrote a letter to his son saying, I'm going to New York State to be a member of the third House of Legislature. And by that, he meant the lobbyists, because there's only 2 houses of legislature in any state. But even back then, they knew what they were doing.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Do we have any my brain's not working. It must be the robot. Data on how many people have gotten sick, died?
Great question. It is very hard to find a absolutely, any kind of state or city health study about the neighborhood and the level of cancer there.
And no one's done one.
They won't do it. No one's done one. And when you talk to them about it, all that they talk about is all the risk factors outside of the toxic waste that can cause cancer that they can't measure in a city like New York because of the smog, because of the level of, you could have any number of things. But what I also know is that for the developers that are building these 30-story buildings, they have to, in order to get their tax break, they have to get a AAA tort insurance. It's required by the state, which says specifically, that a certain number of people in this building are going to get cancer, and you have to prepare for that.
They do legally. What they do. Okay, here's an example.
You know more about this maybe than I do.
I work in the healthcare. What is my camera freaking doing? I work in the healthcare industry. It's infected with environmental toxins. Sorry.
Yeah.
I work in the healthcare industry, and there are so many factors, but I want to make it very, very simple for people to kind of understand. Let's take COVID, right? If I had a COVID infection, I became sick, and I drove to my doctor's office and died in a car accident. Did I die because of COVID? Yes, because I got COVID, I got my car, so I died because of COVID. But did I die of COVID? No. So what these companies do is they say, if X number of people died,
Rod Barron sorry, but our one of our viewers, Red Barron, has left some great stuff here up on the screen. There are more than 10 times as many lobbyists as politicians.
Oh, and I think that's a conservative number. I think
that's a very conservative number. And a lot of these politicians that are in the pockets of these elite lobbyists go on to work for the same corporations that they're lobbied by. After they get out of Congress and the Senate, they go to work for these big corporations. So sorry, go ahead.
No, but my point is that there are so many factors that can cause people to die that they'll say, oh, you died in a car accident. Oh, he died of this, he died of that, he died of this, he died of that, he died of this, he died of that. And they'll make every excuse rather than say the cause, the reason for this death is the pollution. They'll find every other excuse.
Absolutely.
Are there any homes now that there must be homes built on in this area now? Are there not people there that have gotten super sick that have tried to blame it on where they live?
Well, I know of this couple that moved to the area in 1974. And during COVID, both of them within 6 months of each other got cancer very severely and died.
And we know that the sludge and the mayonnaise we spoke of are super carcinogenic, right?
Yes.
I mean, I just don't see how. I hate how the rich can weasel out of just what is
So,
straight up logic.
Yes.
Joseph, have you reached out to Erin Brockovich? I'm just asking.
You know,
Does
it's
it
funny
feel
because I
like-
was reading her Wikipedia page the other day, and absolutely I would love to. And the truth is, I'm working indirectly with this advocacy group called Voice of Gowanus, who is suing the city of New York over this rezone, allowing this 30-story buildings. And they are working with the lawyer from Love Canal back in the 70s. So we didn't get Erin, but we got her lawyer. And it's a very complicated thing. We had to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars actually to do that. You know, they are aware. This, of course, they're aware of all these, you know, what is going on, but these are real estate billionaires. This is the powerful lobby in New York that controls so much of what happens here. The finance industry, the real estate billionaires, and it's really high quality, awesome people that you love, like Jared Kushner.
Jared Kushner. I was just going to bring him up.
Perfect. What were you going to say? Because he owned land along the canal.
Slumlord.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I saw a special on Jared Kushner, and like they were showing property after property after property of his company, and the places that these people were living in were not only polluted and nasty, but had rats and were falling apart. I mean, it was living in third world type of conditions, and these people were not only living in these type of conditions, but they were also being like abused in all sorts of other ways, like having their rents hiked and getting kicked out for other people to come in, and revolving door, and then they were getting blamed for the problems that they were living in.
That's the best tactic. You broke your toilet.
Yeah, you brought the rats. You brought the poison.
Right. What did you do?
And then you see these pictures of Kushner, you know, in Manhattan, sipping his martinis with his, robotic
alien wife.
Alien wife.
And then the alien wife. And then they donate money to charity.
Oh yes,
so that they can be philanthropists, and they can be. Oh, I care about the environment. I donated, and then I don't want to get into the whole Trump.
Davos this year.
His charitable campaign was shut down, and I don't even want to.
Those people don't know how to do anything without stealing. You don't make $1 billion not stealing from that. That's just how it works. And you know how horrible his father was? His father went to jail for setting up his own brother with a prostitute just to get him out of some money. I mean, there's a whole story about these are really, really low grade people, you know?
Yeah. It's my personal opinion that you can't be a billionaire without being a low grade human being.
Yeah.
I think if you have not only a billion, but multiple billions, think how many people you've had to step on to get there. This guy that's sending all these rockets up,
Elon Musk.
Elon. I mean, come on. This thing that he's pulled with electric cars, and it's great. I think electric cars are great, but you have to drive them for 7 years for them to even balance out as far as the saving any sort of environmental impact. And then this is the kind of guy that buys Twitter and fires 75,000 people the next day or whatever. So to fire 75,000 people, you have to be an asshole.
Yeah.
And by the way, how glitchy did Twitter get? How off? I mean, we were trying to do our spaces, Manu, and people couldn't join, and we were getting dropped, and because he fired all the people that kept the platform working.
Right.
I felt like the people that voted for Trump when Elon bought Twitter, because he was talking about free speech and making Twitter the free speech platform and all that, and then I was like, yeah, cool, man. Maybe this Elon rocket ship guy, car guy, PayPal dickhead is actually going to do something cool for Twitter. Not. He fucked the whole thing up. He messed the whole thing up. I'm sorry, Facebook, for my I'm not sorry, but I'm trying. I'm trying to follow your stupid rules of speaking like a child instead of an adult.
Oh, God. Is that true? Should I not be?
Shut up. Excuse me.
I'll keep
Well,
that in
yeah,
mind.
we're doing this show. We're trying to get people to listen. We're trying to get people to talk about important things. We're trying to have a little fun, and all.
But we
these
also got to keep it real. That's real.
Mhm.
Keep
Yeah,
it up.
yeah. He did. He effed it up big time. And all these different channels that we're going out to, they all have their little rules about what you can and can't get away with.
Right.
And of course, if you have a few million people watching you, you can get away with a little bit more. Same thing, if you're rich and doing well, you can get away with stuff. Like we could probably, if we had 10 million people watching the show tonight, we could probably have like coal tar about like up to here on the screen and get away with it.
Great. Toxic waste is okay, but no nudity.
I could well, I was gonna say I could take out my penis and slap it across the camera for 10 million views and some lobbyists in Washington. Who cares, right?
Yeah.
I'd really like what they do.
Well, I think that's what they do when they go home all the time. I mean, I think that's probably one of their favorite things to do is pull out their penis and slap it against their things.
Fire hydrants.
Yeah. Just whatever they can, because I'm the cock of the walk, babe. I just sold property in Guyana. I'm like, if you buy property in Guyana, you're gonna want to move.
Right.
I'm not the only one that thought of that joke, but I did think of it. It's horrible, it's horrible that no tests have been done to figure out how many people. Because all right, you can say, like, for instance, you have a couple of friends, had a couple of friends who got cancer and died, who lived on what was obviously a polluted property. Why is it that there must be like come on, Manu. These companies, I mean, these people that do the work that you're doing, there must
investigative journalists,
etc. That there must be some test that's been done to show, hey, we think we've lost about this many so far already. Did you couldn't find any numbers like
New
that?
York State, nor New York City, nor even the EPA have ever done a comprehensive health study of that particular neighborhood. And that is something they'll say about any neighborhood in the city, because again, like anytime there's any kind of material that is potentially toxic around, they can blame cancer rates or that sort of thing on that. So it allows them to, and also if you're talking about revealing how much toxic waste is under the ground in these neighborhoods and what it might potentially do to people, it will ruin, property values. And they really don't want to do that. They don't want people to know about that. I know it shouldn't be this stark, but that kind of thing is what disrupts an entire plan for the future. Like this housing they want to build there is affordable housing. It's actually subsidized, and affordable means you have to make at least $70,000 a year to get it. But it's supposed to actually be cheaper than market rate housing in the city.
So it's for the poor.
In theory, it's for the poor, and that is a great place to put. Yeah, right on top of toxic waste.
Why would the government commission a study that would find them liable, and then they would have to pay? I mean, why would the government fund this just so they could be sued and then have to pay?
Exactly.
Is that not cyclical? I mean, is that not what we're stuck in?
Completely.
And since Trump, the EPA has also had its hands tied in several ways, right? I mean,
what they did was fire all of the upper level people that were legacy that had been there for years, and then replace them with appointees that would do whatever the Trump people said. And so not only did they get rid of great people, they also kept the worst people and gave them the better job. Is what I understand.
Almost Attorney General, the guy from the EPA, right?
Right. That it could have been any job. That however he tickled somebody's undercarriage to get what he wanted out of the Trump administration. I'm trying to be not, and it's just, again, I've been following this story for more than a decade, and what happens in every level just shows how people have their personal goals, whatever their professional goals are, and then they're like real feelings and beliefs about what should happen. And what I noticed in history in my book that I wrote was that inevitably an engineer will say, hey, this problem with the Gowanus Canal should be fixed. Starting in like 1877, they were complaining about this. And then some governmental person said, no, that's too expensive. We got to do it for cheaper. That's always what happens. No matter what happens, someone tries to knock down the price because this is America. And we got to, it's it's not about science, it's about money. And so they are doing it now. And they can do it now because the EPA has been so decimated and just like more, demoralized that, they would take the engineers and actually like give them reprimands for telling the public about things that we had a right to know. And they would try and get them fired. These are policy people that don't have any science degrees that make decisions like that.
Does anybody know if Ray-Bans has done anything about the devastation that Trump caused to the EPA? Has he reversed any of that stuff?
It's legacy damage. People will talk about it, but it's usually that the people that would talk about it were getting in trouble for talking about it. And so, it was only now that the administration is in place for a couple of years that they could start going back to where they were before. But they can't just fire everybody. So all these terrible people that are pushing around the lower people, they won't necessarily get fired because people that were qualified to do these jobs have all retired and moved on. Private industry,
It's what happens to whistleblowers? What happens to whistleblowers? Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning. When people,
Chelsea Manning went back to jail.
If you, they said, well, because you didn't whistleblow in the right way, you're supposed to do it privately up these particular channels. Well, these particular channels are designed to keep it private, and the American citizens never know about it. So what good is the whistleblowing if nobody can hear the whistle, right? Whistleblowing is to say, hey, world, look at the evil stuff going on here. I'm going to get us in trouble, Manu. I'm sorry. Look at the evil stuff going on here. Look, I want the American people to see. I don't want some commander, over here looking that I want the people to see this. And they all end up going to jail or going to Russia.
Right.
Yeah,
it is terrifying, actually. I know someone internally who is retired very, very recently.
Look at this picture. Look at this picture. Can we put some of these pictures like on the main screen? I want to see some of this stuff.
Yes, that one right there.
Where is this? Is that the canal?
This is the canal in the present day. This is the lower part of the canal, and these are private. Yeah, and that's a great picture as well.
And that's poop. I see the poop.
Yep. That's just one of dozens, hundreds of pictures I have of poop in the canal. You also see condoms. You see anything that potentially could go in the water, there. And now the water in the canal was so toxically polluted at one point that barge captains would put their barges in the canal, drive them in there just to kill the barnacles on the bottom. That's how polluted it was.
Oh my God.
It would fall off. That's how polluted it was. They called it Lavender Lake, and it was nothing could live there. And, that's why it was famously a place for bodies to get thrown into, because they would just sort of disappear. When they took the black mayonnaise out of the bottom of the canal and they put it in a plastic container for the first day the EPA was doing their research, they left it in that container overnight. And the next day it had melted through.
Well, let me ask you a question. God. If you were to tie a body, with an anchor and drop it in there, what diver is going to go in there to retrieve it?
No, because it's just going to go into the goop.
The goop and disintegrate. Now, the only divers that go in there are like either really stupid people that claim to be environmental activists, or people that are like Coast Guard or police divers that have to go down because someone drove their car in accidentally and they have to get people out of there. So you have to have a special suit, like an extra hazmat-y, scuba outfit.
Coast Guard are crazy people.
Yes.
Yeah.
I once dated a guy in the Coast Guard. It was very weird. Yeah.
Are you guys both single right now?
I say that because I'm a U.S. Coast Guard.
Oh, cool. Oh, great. Oh, well, he was hot as fuck. Oh, sorry.
So
Now I'm gonna.
I'm allowed to say that.
This is Hurricane Sandy, is what that picture is.
Yeah, but some of that water's from the canal.
Yes, this is the sea level rise, not just downhill flow, but up sea level rise coming from the swell of a hurricane. So that is sea waters that have combined sewage overflow, non-aqueous phase liquid. It has polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. It has all of these concentrated, again, parts per 100. It's really one of the most concentrated polluted places in the country. And
this is the type of thing that you could go out and like wade through it as a kid thinking you were having fun, and like the rest, and then you've got Parkinson's.
I met guys in their 50s who used to swim in the canal when they were kids.
I've heard all about people swimming in the canal, and I've heard all about the cliffs they used to jump off and blah blah blah.
And people fish there too, or they would fish and then eat the fish, which I know it sounds crazy, but there are like migrant guys that come through New York, with no idea about how polluted it is, and they would fish there. People that just are coming from other countries and know nothing, and that legally actually became one of the things that is called an exposure pathway to prove that the city, that the EPA needed to take over this city property as a federal Superfund site. They had to show that people were doing it.
I just had salmon for lunch, and I feel it repeating on me.
Wow.
Did you check the package and see if it said caught in goannas?
Caught in goannas, yeah.
You know what? It did say channel cat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, that was catfish. Channel cat.
Historically, goannas famously was known for its oysters. Huge dinner plate sized oysters. This is before it was polluted. I'm talking 17th century, 18th century history. They had fabulous oysters because it was a marshland that had fresh water flowing into it. So it created brackish water where it's seawater, and they would harvest all this amazing food from around there.
But
what about pearls on that side of oyster? What kind of pearls would they have?
I don't know. Probably
there must have been a point in like 1877, 1867 where people were eating those oysters still.
They were for sure. They didn't make it illegal to harvest oysters out of any part of the Bay of New York until 1922. So in that century, no, for a fact, they were doing the 1840s, 50s, and 60s. And by the 1861, they were definitely dumping coal tar all over the area. So, I mean, even then, the raw sewage, that was already happening. It really upset so many people. And I think in the third chapter of the book, there's the first lawsuit that was ever mentioned in any of the records I could find was in 1864. And it was a guy that claimed that the smell was so bad that it had killed his father-in-law and injured the health of his wife. That's what he wrote. And then the councilmen were responding to this whole thing, and they said, we had better pay him for his land. I would not take this as a present if someone gave it to me. That is how polluted it is.
In the late 1800s, this is a true story. In the late 1800s, there was a law written that said you can't give prisoners lobster more than twice a week because cruel and unusual.
Wow.
Back then it was considered a throwaway thing.
Poor people food, right? Yeah.
Right. You can't. My goodness, if I could be locked up in the 1800s, can I get some butter with that? Some butter.
I mean, I would not eat lobster. And they have found animals in the canal repeatedly. They always die. Like there was a whale that swam up the canal, a minke whale. This was in 2007, and they named it Sludgy the Whale after the sludge, and also because Carvel makes Fudgy the Whale, which is a chocolate whale. And then Sludgy, cute, within 48 hours died in the canal. And there was also dolphin. I mean, there's always animals going in there. Ultimately, they end up dying. Because why would you go there unless you were a confused animal?
And you're not going to be anything but more confused the more you swim.
Yeah.
So we've talked about how bad and how polluted and how everything. I guess the next, we only have.
How do we fix it?
Before we,
right.
How do we fix it? How do we go from where it is today to where it needs to be?
Right. So what's happening right now in places like this is that when there's a big Superfund, which is a government project to clean up toxic waste, they have to involve community members. And they do it with these community groups And within those groups, there's locals, and then there's also all of the paid money interests that have the right to go in there and get involved with the process. And so what needs to happen, and this is the annoying part, is that people, adults with not enough time, have to go be civically involved and get involved in these groups and say, we're paying attention to what you're doing. We have to ask questions about this, this, and this, and this. So like the group that does this, the community advisory group, they have to ask hard questions and learn all this wonky stuff. Because if they don't, the government people will not listen to the engineers, and the moneyed interests will make all the influence they can. All of the headway that this Gowanus project has gotten to clean it up, to get even 50 feet out of the 150 feet of toxic waste, they were going to remove 8 feet, right? It was only because people complained so much, wrote to their Congress people, they have to do all this work that they shouldn't have to, and make noise about it, because even the media is not reporting. I tried to take the story to the New York Times, and they were like, sorry, we're not interested. Or we'll have our own person do it, is what they actually said. And that's just like, are you kidding me? That person's on leave. So like,
did they do it? No, they didn't.
No, of course they didn't. Are you kidding me? No, they take as much real estate money in ads
because they're bought just like everybody else. Yeah,
and I hate.
I forget that the elite, control the papers and the television and the
worse than it ever has
everything
been.
else. Yeah.
So people have to be involved in and not believe that things are getting done the way they want to. And the evidence of how this country has been lately should be there. And it's making noise. So I appreciate you letting me on here, because I feel like I'm making noise right now. And that is the whole point.
That is the whole point. Now, Cassie, do we have anybody who's lined up to ask questions or would like to speak with Joseph?
Not at the moment, but if anybody out there
serious?
would like to be on,
we need to get our people from Twitter to come and watch our live show and comment. You know, when we did Dangerous Thoughts on Twitter Spaces,
there's the banner.
We had people. All you need to do is write subscript pirate at Twitter, and we will bring you on live, and we will discuss, and you can share your face with us. And if you're super ugly and hideously ugly, and you don't want to share your face with us, just put on a mask. Put on a mask.
So, or you could become co-host
backwards to the screen, or just hold your hand over the microphone. I mean, over the camera,
or show a different body part. I guess.
Yes, whatever you need to do, just join us, because we had so many people. I know we're just getting started with the live show, and people are watching. Thank you very much for watching. But we'd love to have you involved, and we'd love to have you come on the show. We try to save the last 10-15 minutes to have people come and talk, and so let's at least show another picture of Joe's book. Joe, can you get this on Amazon?
Yes, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Books A Million, and you can also buy direct from the publisher at NYU Press. But that's the easiest way, is Amazon.
Oh, cool. So it's okay. There's the cover.
Right.
Oh, that looks disgusting.
Right. Yeah, that's a painting actually of the canal. You do have one comment to Red Baron. There's a lot of good comments here and questions as I'm seeing.
Yeah, Red Baron did leave a bunch of great comments.
Yeah, he said most polluted. He said, what about the infamous Love Canal? And so the Love Canal that he mentions is the Aaron Brockovich moment, where they created this law for Superfund to create, and the rating system that they used was invented for Love Canal, scale of a 0 to 100. You have to get a minimum of 28 to be a Superfund site, and they made 50 the score for Love Canal, and 50 is also the score for Gowanus. So they're actually as bad as each other. And what are they going to do with all this coal tar? They actually will re-engineer it to things like concrete, and they don't ship it, or they don't put it under the ground in New Jersey. They try and re-engineer it, and it's a hugely expensive thing to deal with. It's just wild what they will do to get out of their responsibility. So, make noise is what I'm
yeah, and it also bothers me because, we try to make as much noise as we can on Dangerous Thoughts about important stuff. And I feel like they've done such a good job on the elite level to keep us all major polluters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm very, very I get on myself every week when I see how much trash I create, just how much recycling and trash that goes out every week just from me and one other person. It's disgusting. And we're all doing a really, really bad job with our genetic footprint. We made a little fun with cigarettes and cigarette smoke, and screw those people that have a problem with the little cigarette smoke outside. But there is so much that all of us can actually be doing to be helping this planet, and also helping these, helping clean up stuff. It's wonderful to hear that 50 feet of this 150 feet of tar is getting removed. It'd be much better if it was all 150 feet.
That'd be great. But they don't want to pay for it.
No.
But we fought for 50 and got 50, and that's the victories you have to look at. It's not 8 feet or 3.
Yeah.
A war isn't won decisively in one swoop. It's battle after battle after battle after battle. So
the next thing is to not have them
putting up the fight.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm finding that so many Americans can be, and I want this to change, but that can be so lazy when it comes to participating in their local anything, local government, local politics, local anything, parks, whatever you can do. There's so many things that you can do locally in your city, whether you live in New York or whether you live in LA or whether you live in Cleveland or Colorado Springs.
The biggest thing you can do is to vote.
Yeah,
well, you can vote. Yeah,
people
vote
died for your ability to vote, and people died for that. And I have seen people who, at the coffee shop. There was, I'm enjoying my espresso. I don't think I'm going to go vote. People died.
Vote,
for you
and
to
if
have that
you're
opportunity.
lucky enough not to have to work for jobs, and you're lucky enough to be lower, like upper poor class and lower middle class and middle class or anything above, donate your time to something that counts. Like, go do it. It'll make you feel better. It'll make you feel good. You'll be serving a higher purpose. Maybe we'll get to 51 feet with the Gowanus Canal, and there's stuff to clean up all over the place, and unfortunately, we're not doing a good enough job. But we can. To end the show, we can become a more educated, a more caring, a more empathetic, a more loving people that actually give, two hoots about the planet that we live on and the care that it takes. We were originally, I believe, the whole idea of being human and of becoming a better human being and an enlightened human being, a more conscious human being. We're here as caretakers, and we're doing a very poor job. And so just, coming on this show, Joe, I appreciate that you're educating people about this, writing this book, getting this book out there, that you're educating people about this and trying to get people to care, because that's the most important thing in the world is care.
Thank you so much.
Well, knowing that there's a problem.
Knowing that
if we don't know, then nobody knows to fix it.
Yeah. And then caring about it and getting other people to care about it. And then suddenly, that's the beautiful thing about the human race, is if you get a couple of people to care, they get a couple of friends of theirs to care, and then suddenly you've got people doing work. It didn't go the way I wanted it to, but I remember when what's his name, Ray-Bans? Biden, goes to, when he wanted to do that 17 trillion or whatever it was, rebuild our country program, what was the great
build
one
back better
right?
What was the one back in the day though, like the bitchin' one where they built the Golden Gate Bridge and all that?
The Works Progress Administration? No, that's not it.
It was called the Great something or other.
You're talking about after the Great Depression. The
it was a huge
I know, a chicken in every pot.
It's why we have an infrastructure right now.
The New Deal.
The New Deal. There you go. So
the New Deal.
If we would have gotten a New Deal again, and we were close, but if $17 trillion would have been spent, I would have picked up a shovel. I would have gone out there and participated in rebuilding this country and making it more green and all that stuff that they wanted to do. Like, I think I'm not the only one. And I'm one of the laziest, most self-centered dickheads in the world. And I would absolutely have participated in rebuilding this country and just been like, hey, show me what to do. I will help. So thanks for caring, Joe. Thanks for caring, Tyson. Thanks for having this show on the environment. I know a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but if we don't do something in the next...
Right. Watch time, not calendar time. Watch
time. It is time to do some real change. The clock is ticking. I think those super smart scientists that the doomsday clock, it's never been closer than now. And I think closer to midnight. And I think it's more because of pollution and global warming and all the terrible things we're doing to our planet. And we don't have to be doing this. There are better ways to live. So thank you, Joe. Thank you, Tyson. Thank you for everybody watching. If there's anybody that wants to speak, we'll take one more caller. If not, join us on Overtime on Twitter. On Twitter Spaces, we always hang out. We talk about the topic of the show a little bit more. We'll be on there for another 20 minutes, half an hour, only on Twitter Spaces. And join us next week on Twitter and Facebook and everywhere else that we go to.
I think your microphone is cutting out, Manu. I don't know what happened.
We're going to be on TikTok. Join you next week on Dangerous Thoughts. Thanks, everybody.
See you on Twitter in a few minutes. Bye, guys.
Bye. On the floor, it's called Dangerous Thoughts Sundays.